Welcome to the Castle of Spirits Paranormal Podcast, Extrasode number 10. This Extrasode is brought to you by episode number 24, wherein we discussed time slips.
That we did.
And we do have a couple of stories straight out of the Castle archive to read to you.
Right. We basically wanted to share some of the stories that our readers and listeners have submitted about time slips. We had 2 stories, only 2 that we could find in the Castle of Spirits library.
I'm sure there's more. They just don't actually use the word time slip in them.
Going through 4,600 stories is a gargantuan task that sometimes I feel I am almost up to. But it's a fun job, and darn it, somebody's got to do it.
And so we do. We also have a time slip story to read to you by a listener who was submitted through the lounge, right?
Right on. So stay tuned, everybody. Here it goes. Right.
So here, I'm going to start first. I have a story called Time Slips, and it's submitted by Lynn in South Australia in September of 1999.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this could be classed as a proper ghost story, but it is strange and creepy nonetheless. A couple of years ago, I lived in a small outback town which was built in 1947. The streets were all exactly the same as the original town, as were most of the buildings, apart from a few upgrades. Anyway, I was driving toward the main intersection of the town when suddenly I felt a change in the air. It wasn't the classic colder feeling, but a change, like a shift in atmosphere. The air felt denser somehow. As I slowed at the intersection, I seemed to be suddenly transported back in time to approximately 1950. The road was dirt, the trees were gone, and coming toward me to cross the intersection was an old black car, something like a Vanguard or an old JF Holden. As the car passed through the intersection, the driver was looking back at me in total astonishment before he accelerated. From what I could see, he was dressed in similar 1950s fashion, complete with hat. This whole episode lasted perhaps 20 seconds and was repeated at least 5 times during my time there, always at the exact spot. I tried to make out the registration plate number, but the car was covered in dust. I often wonder if there is someone out there still living who remembers seeing a strange sight at the intersection back in the 50s of a futuristic motor vehicle with a bug-eyed woman at the wheel. Oh my gosh, I had not read that story yet.
Are you serious? That's one of the most fascinating stories. When you started reading the story,
yeah.
I mean, I know it's from the Castle of Spirits archive, but when you were reading it, I was like, this is the classic story.
And it's almost exactly like what we were talking about in episode 24, where it seems like a meeting of the worlds, right? He's looking at her like, what? Whether it's him who crossed over into her time or just a perfect blending of the two.
Fortunately for her and for the other driver, it wasn't a collision of worlds, because can you imagine if that were to happen, if you were to somehow really quickly cross paths with somebody from another time, and if you crashed into each other, especially in a car, where would she end up? Would the person...
Right. Who has jurisdiction over that crash?
Exactly. Would the person from the 50s be transported to the future or vice versa? Right. Would they switch places in a Freaky Friday type thing?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this makes Back to the Future look like child's play.
Yeah. But you know what, Lynn? If you're still out there and if you're listening to this, we need to know if you ever found anyone who had a similar experience there or whatever. We would love to hear from you.
Or if it ever happened again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess it's too late now to ask if anybody from the 1950s saw Lynn back in the 1950s.
I mean, maybe.
Transported back in a futuristic vehicle. But maybe
if you guys have stories along these lines about this place or whatever, we want to hear about it. You can tell us. We believe you.
We do. Indeed, we do. So this whole topic reminds me that we received an email from Ron, submitted in the lounge, and he tells a really cool story that I want to share with you guys. So check this out.
I'm excited to hear it.
Hey, Vince and Jane. Well, of course, just the introductions here. You know how much I appreciate you guys, the website and podcast. So I will skip with the gushing. No, please more.
Please gush.
And in parentheses, seriously, you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Oh, stop. Go on.
And Ron goes on to say, I have a boatload of other spooky happenings to share, and I will type them up and post to the site when I have a chance. I swear I'm something of a lightning rod for the paranormal. I would love to speak with you too on the podcast about some of them and the paranormal in general. And that's something that we're looking forward to doing in the future. We just, when we figure it out how to bring somebody into on the conversation, we'll definitely do that. So Ron shares with us a really cool story. Check this out. A few weeks ago on your Extrasode, Jane mentioned subtle hauntings are more terrifying than extreme ones. But I do have a short spooky tale for you. Several years ago, I was puppy sitting for my wife's parents. Aw, Ron, did the puppy have a name?
Right. We always need to know the pet's name.
Just kidding.
I'm not.
I was puppy sitting for my wife's parents at their house while they were out of town. It was around 8 p.m. in the early fall. I was sitting on the couch with the little puppers. Her name is Olive. Oh, sorry, Ron.
We jumped the gun there. Thanks for the name. Oh, Olive. So cute.
Her name is Olive, and she's an adorable Chihuahua Dachshund. How do you say that? Dachshund mix. And we were watching Mythbusters. This guy, a guy after our own heart.
Oh, boy.
My wife was at work 20 minutes away on the other side of town, and she wasn't due to get home until after 10 p.m. The house is on a dead-end street, kind of out of the way of traffic, and there were never any people walking on the sidewalk nearby. I wasn't expecting company either. I distinctly recall the dog perk up her ears and growl, which was very uncommon for her. A second later, I heard a loud knock at the front door.
Ooh.
Olive went ballistic. Good doggy. She ran to the door barking and growling with her hackles raised. A few more knocks sounded off, and I heard my wife's voice on the other side of the door.
No.
Booger, open up the door. Nobody else has ever called me that but her. Cool name. You should hear what Jane calls me. It ain't Booger.
Can't say it on the air.
I asked her what she did with her house key. I heard several more knocks, and her voice replied, Booger, hurry up and let me in.
Ooh.
At this point, Olive was scratching at the door and barking, snarling, and just flipping the heck out. I told her to hold on a second and I'll let you in. I got up and walked around the couch to the front door. The knocking and the voice continued to persist on the other side of the door. I unlocked the handle and deadbolt and swung the door open. Now, I cannot stress this enough. I fully expected to see my beautiful wife at the door, home early from work. What I didn't expect was what I saw, which was nothing.
Nothing.
Literally nothing. No humans, no ghost, no black-eyed kids, no Sasquatch, just an empty front yard lit by the pre-dusk sun.
Oh, I have chills. That is so creepy.
Only my car was in the driveway. The dog was still growling with her hackles raised as I looked around the side of the house just to find, again, nothing. Once I realized what had just happened, I ran back into the house and locked the door.
Yeah,
yes, that's what I would have done.
That's a very wise move.
I was shaking and panicked.
Except the ghost got in behind you.
Oh, no.
When the door was open.
He let it in.
It
oh,
snuck
God.
in.
Ron, you're in trouble. At least it's not his house, so he's
Oh, that's a good point.
He's okay. It's the in-laws' house. I immediately tried calling my wife on her cell to confirm that she was still at work. She didn't answer any of the 10 times I tried to call her. I called her place of business and asked to talk to her, but she was busy because of a rush of customers. She did end up calling me back at 10:30 after her shift, and I asked her if she was messing with me. She said absolutely not. She was at work the whole time. Her coworkers and her manager verified the story. See, he's the guy that's committed to the truth. He doesn't take his wife's word for it. He goes, let me talk to your boss and make sure. I would do the same thing.
Would you now?
I sure would.
Would you?
Okay, no, I wouldn't.
That's right.
Ron goes on, so I still have no idea what happened. Was it a time slip? A demon? Fairy or fae? I still get cold chills when I think about it because whatever was on the other side of that door copied my wife's voice and mannerisms perfectly to the point that I could not discern it from my real wife.
I would have cried.
God, that's chilling.
It's so scary.
I opened that door and could have let something in without realizing it.
I think you did.
I can't believe that it was all in my imagination because Olive is not an aggressive dog. She sure hated whatever it was out there that night, and she knew it was bad before I had a chance to rationalize it. All I do know is that I hope to never experience that situation again.
I mean, not even once.
No. Somebody coming to your door and knocking, that's scary enough as it is. I've said that before.
It's true. Yeah. No.
But when it's somebody...
Don't knock on the door. Use the doorbell. Knocking that's what lunatics do.
So this could be a time slip. This could be a doppelganger. This could be a demon.
It could be parallel universes touching.
Or it could be grounds for divorce. But I don't think the latter is the case. I think it's one of the former. And I don't know what this is. I have no idea.
Honestly, it doesn't matter what it is, because one thing I know for certain that it is scary as hell.
SAF, baby. Oh.
I think you mean SAH.
SAH, let's keep this clean. Don't even say the letter.
Let's keep it PG-13 at least.
Yeah. There's a PS to this. He says, about the Haunted Lakes episode, look up the story of Minnie Quay. It's a local Michigan Lake Huron tale that I grew up with. It's full of tragedy, romance, and history. Thanks, dude. I will definitely look that up, and maybe we'll do some sort of a follow-up on the Haunted Lakes.
Yeah, we can. There's so many haunted lakes in the world. We could definitely do a few more of those episodes.
Right. So I completely believe Ron.
Oh, yeah.
The email that he sent has got the ring of truth to it.
Yeah. And he did submit that through the lounge, but we will migrate that over to the stories.
Right.
The stories page, which actually I have not updated yet this month.
Oh, for shame.
Cut me some slack. But we do have a few new stories to put in. And hopefully by the time you're hearing this, they're already up. So check them out, and you can read Ron's story as well. So I have one more story.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm. And it is called Missing Time, submitted by Anonymous in Oregon, USA, September of also 1999.
Okay, hold on a second. This was September 99. Was the other story also September 99? But
yeah, they're both September of 99. So
two people in September 99 submitted stories, true stories about time slips, but on the other side of the world from each other. Mm-hmm. What was happening in the world at that time? Maybe Arbella just had a show about time
Y2K was about to happen, and everybody was freaking out, remember?
Oh, yeah.
That was part of the energy in the collective conscious at the time. Okay, so Anonymous in Oregon says, I'm not sure if this qualifies as a ghost story, which is pretty much how the last story started too. It's something strange that happened that to this day I still don't have a logical explanation for. I was at home alone in my apartment. I can't remember the exact date, but it was in 1997, around the middle of September. It was late at night, but I wasn't sleepy yet, so I decided to stay up and try to fix this chair I had whose arm kept falling off. Same chair. Same. I was sitting cross-legged and barefoot on my floor, wrestling with this chair arm. I never did fix that chair, but trying to was a good way to wear myself out enough to get to sleep. I happened to glance at the clock, just as the digital display turned over from 11:59 to midnight. I glanced away, then glanced back. The clock read 12:10. In what felt like the blink of an eye, 10 minutes had passed, according to that clock. I blinked a few times, thinking I was seeing things, but the clock turned over from 12:10 to 12:11. I looked at my VCR clock. It read 12:11 too. I thought, that was weird. Must be getting tired. So I started to get up to get ready for bed and realized I was lightheaded and somewhat disoriented. Even though it was my own apartment, for a moment I had no idea where I was or what I was doing. The moment passed, but it took a few minutes for me to get my bearings. I also noticed my left foot was bleeding, with a little puddle of blood around it soaking into the carpet. I took a closer look and found a puncture, about half as big around as a pencil and about 1/4 of an inch deep, kind of slanted into the skin. It didn't hurt, and though it was bleeding freely, it certainly wasn't gushing. After I got my bearings, I went to the first aid kit and cleaned up the wound. Though it soaked through several bandages, it eventually stopped bleeding. I looked around very carefully for anything I might have cut or punctured my foot on, but the carpet had just been vacuumed and I couldn't find anything at all, let alone anything that would have made a puncture that deep and that big. I'd like to think of myself as more practical than paranoid, so I just wrote the whole thing off as a whatever and went to bed. I figured I'd just zoned out for a few minutes and missed a spot while vacuuming or something. I turned off the lights and curled up under the blankets, waiting to drift off. Just as I started to fall asleep, I got the weirdest feeling. Like the room simultaneously became colder and warmer, and I felt a sudden chill and flash of heat all at once. This brought me wide awake. I was facing the wall, curled up around a pillow, and my back was to the rest of the room. Since this was my room and I was used to sleeping in it, I was usually comfortable there, but just then I felt terribly exposed. Have you ever felt someone's presence before you actually saw them? Like feeling eyes on you? I felt like there was someone in the room standing right beside the bed looking down on me, though I hadn't heard anyone come in. I still wasn't in the mind of creepy things are happening, so I thought it was an intruder and turned around and sat up, panicked for reasons that were all too non-supernatural. Of course, no one was there, which was a relief, but I still felt the need to get up and check all the doors and windows to make sure they were locked, which they were. All snug and secure, I went back to bed. The moment I laid down, I felt it again, a very intense presence standing near the bed. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I looked again, and again no one was there. Not to mention my wounded foot started to really hurt, throbbing painfully. There was nothing else to do, really, but lay there in a state of irritable creepiness until I finally conked out from exhaustion. The presence was still there when I fell asleep, still looming. When I woke up the next morning, it was gone, and that was that. So thank you again to Anonymous in Oregon for submitting that in September of 1999. That's a kind of a classic thing that, paranormal experience that happens, feeling the presence, the temperature changes. And
Right. A lot of these things people do associate with hauntings, but the whole thing about the clock and the missing time, that touches on, I mean, you'll have a whole other arm of the paranormal community saying that it could have been an alien encounter,
abduction.
Some sort of an abduction, that sometimes you don't actually witness a craft landing when these things happen.
But devil's advocate, it could have been a medical issue. There's the wooziness and disorientation, and then the sudden hot and cold and chills and sweating. It could have been. I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying I don't believe the person experienced this story, but, just laying all possibilities out on the table.
There are some people in this world, and sometimes, depending on how I feel, I might be one of them, who would say it's what's more likely that this person had some sort of a medical incident that created some lost time, or that time folded in on itself and there was a ghost watching you at this, all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I do think that it's more than likely that the truth lies somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And that there are things that happen, maybe electromagnetic energies build up in the soil or something, and they release this thing that we perceive as visual hallucinations, or feeling the presence of somebody nearby, that sort of thing.
Well, we've talked about the fear frequency before.
Oh, yeah. Episode number, I don't remember, but it was an early
one
episode.
Of the early ones.
I want to say episode number 4. Go look for it.
But that's definitely a thing, and I'm sure that there's a lot of things that can cause a similar response. So just briefly, you can listen to that episode to hear more about it. But a fear frequency is there's a frequency that the human ear can't hear. Like, you don't actually hear it, but it causes feelings of dread and a feeling of being watched. And there was a case of a science lab where every day, it would be fine, but suddenly everybody in the lab would feel like they were being watched and have this overwhelming sense of dread. And it turned out that it was a malfunctioning fan on the roof of the building that was emitting this super low frequency. And when that fan would kick on, these feelings would start. And when that fan shut off, the feelings would go away. So
you want to talk about something being really mundane? Mm-hmm. That a malfunctioning fan.
Yeah.
What if everything is like some mundane explanation, like Bigfoot is just a big ape, and you finally see it, and you're
or
like,
a bear.
Oh.
I mean, that would be even more mundane.
Or a bear walking on its hind legs, which they are known to do.
Yeah.
But I digress.
As well you should. So we like to read, messages that we get in the lounge, and we have a new message in the lounge that I wanted to share.
Right on.
It is from Robe, and they say, "What's the concept of this site? I do not find anything scary." So thanks for submitting your question, Robe. Vince, do you want to take this one?
If the concept of spiritual hauntings and paranormal activity doesn't tickle your scary bone, I cannot help you.
Yeah.
But this is basically, in all seriousness, this is a website where people have been submitting their true paranormal stories for a long, long time, over 25 years. And this is a podcast where we share some of those stories and talk about some of the stuff that makes this website up. We're not
professionals, and we're not even particularly good at our jobs, but
is it a job though?
Thanks for dropping by.
I'm not good at my hobby. But thanks for dropping by.
So I wanted to read just a couple of comments that we got on YouTube. Remember that you can head on over to our YouTube channel for some cool graphics while you listen. And Texas T asks on the Haunted Lakes episode, do you believe in paranormal activities? I have never experienced a single one, but why have so many people? What makes one person or family have experiences and others nothing? And I think that's a really great question. And I think we could spend a lot of time on that question alone, probably an entire episode.
I think the answer is very simple. I think that there are some people who are tuned to us, to a certain, again, frequency. Maybe some people call it psychic ability or whatever it's called. I think that there are just some people who are sensitive to those things and they see them more than other people. Maybe one person might experience a ghost sighting in the room, and while another person standing right next to them doesn't experience a thing.
Well, and I've also, you always hear people say, well, some people are just more open to it. And I take issue with that because if there's anyone in this world who has been open to it, it's me. Since I was a kid, I've wanted to see a ghost. I'm totally open to it.
And you ain't seen squat.
I have not seen a ghost. I've had experiences I can't explain, but that doesn't mean there isn't an explanation. So that's all I wanted to read. I thought that those were a couple of interesting comments. So leave us a comment on YouTube and maybe we'll read it on the next episode.
I had a comment too that I wanted to read. This one was on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was on the post for the Amityville horror episode that we did a few episodes back, podcast number 17. Got a comment from Brady Loves Ploy. He said, just listen to this one. Great topic. I wanted to say about the brother's flat hand. So he's commenting on the fact that when Daniel Lutz, one of the children that lived in the Amityville horror house, when the window came down and flattened his hand, we were kind of freaked out about the possibility that if that's the thing that happens or not.
Well, and remember I told you that I had slammed my brother's hand in a car door when he was about 3 or 4, and the exact same thing happened to his hand. So my position was that it was possible.
So Brady says, my son got his finger smashed too around 3 to 4 years old. And the doctor said their bones are very soft because they're still forming. That's why there were no broken bones. My question back, though, was, although I wonder if the same thing would go for a 9 to 10-year-old. That's how old roughly Daniel Lutz was when this happened to him. And Brady responded saying, as a professional structural mechanic on naval aviation equipment, I can wholeheartedly say, probably not.
I can't imagine that there's a complete solidification of the bones in those few years, though. So, I mean, it's probably more likely that a 9 to 10-year-old's hands would be flattened than it is likely that yours or mine would be. So, yeah, I think it's possible.
Of course, the real question is, how did that window come down and crush his fingers? It was the work of the devil.
It was a demon.
But that's the Amityville house. That's another story entirely. We encourage you to go listen to that episode as well, because it was all right. It was all right. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite topics.
So friends, remember to head over to castleofspirits.com and submit your paranormal encounters and any information, questions, comments, emotional outbursts that you have for us. castleofspirits.com/lounge.
All are welcome. All welcome.
Oh boy.